Keeping him locked up sounds like the smart choice. No twisted loyalties, no detours through ancient tunnels, and no chance of him biting off anyone's finger. But Gollum didn't just follow the story. He helped shape it. Without him, the ring still needs to be destroyed, but the path becomes harder to find, and the ending might never come. Welcome to Fool of a Tube. We're glad you're here. Now, grab a snack and settle in. Today we're digging into one of the grimmer what-ifs in Middle-earth. What if one miserable creature never gets loose? In this alternate version of the story, we're asking what changes and whether or not the entire quest unravels because of it. If you're into theory crafting the forgotten threads and unanswered questions of Middle-earth, hit subscribe now and ring the notification bell so you're here for every new deep dive. So, what if Gollum had never escaped from Mirkwood? There's no dramatic pursuit through Eamon Mool, no riddles in the dark, and no dead fish songs drifting across the marshes. Just one miserable creature kept under Elven supervision, sulking in the shadows while the rest of Middle-earth went on with its business. And yet, that single escape, barefoot, pitiful, and probably muttering, set off a chain reaction that altered the course of the entire war. At the time, things seemed under control. Gollum had been captured, Thranduil's people were holding him, and Gandalf had even gone to question him. Then I heard that he had at last been captured by the elves of Mirkwood, and I went to find him. It wasn't exactly the Tower of Barad-dûr, but it was something. Unfortunately, Mirkwood's idea of containment included nature walks, because apparently, nothing says secure holding like letting your prisoner go moon-gazing. Gollum was given time to climb trees and watch the sky, and that was all the chance he needed. He slipped away, and the fallout stretched far beyond those woods. He wasn't just running from the elves. Someone was tracking him, and by that point, he'd already let too much slip. Elrond doesn't spell it all out, but it's clear enough. The enemy learned enough to start sniffing around the Shire. Once Gollum got loose, Frodo's timeline collapsed, and the Nazgûl were sent. The road to Mordor began early, so there was no time for slow decisions or quiet delays. One fugitive changed the pace of the entire quest, and this gets stranger the longer you think about it. Gollum was never supposed to rot in a cell. Gandalf makes that clear when he speaks to Frodo. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need. Frodo, still figuring all this out, replies, "I do not feel any pity for Gollum. He deserves death." And Gandalf doesn't blink. Deserves death. I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some die that deserve life. Can you give that to them? This wasn't just about second chances. Gandalf saw Gollum as necessary. Maybe miserable, maybe dangerous, but still essential. Ending his life would have cut off a thread the story wasn't finished with yet. So if he never escapes, we're standing at a strange fork in the road. Frodo might stay in Bag End longer. The ring might fly under the radar. Sauron might focus elsewhere. But that thread Gandalf mentioned would get severed. Gollum would never make it to Mount Doom, and he wouldn't be there when it counted. Which leaves us with the real question. Was letting him slip away a failure, or the only way forward? Let's take a closer look at what comes next. If Gollum never escaped, would Frodo still have made it to Mordor? On paper, it looks manageable. He had the ring and Sam. Gandalf left instructions. There was a usable map. But Tolkien doesn't shape his stories from supplies and plans. He shapes them from decisions, especially the ones that wear down the will. Without Gollum, Frodo and Sam would have crossed the Eamon Mill alone. They'd be without a guide. They wouldn't find the secret stairs. The way through Shelob's lair would stay unknown. Gollum didn't just happen to know the terrain. He carved that knowledge out of obsession. Every path and shortcut he uncovered came from his fixation with reclaiming the ring. Without that drive, the road might never have been found at all. He also served a different kind of purpose. Gollum gave Frodo something to look at, something that reflected what he might become. As the ring grew heavier, that reflection became harder to ignore. Frodo even said it aloud. "He's bound up with the fate of the ring." It wasn't mere pity. That strange connection gave Frodo a way to understand what the ring could do. Sam couldn't fill that role. He stayed steady and remained loyal, but he never saw the ring the way Frodo did. Gollum understood it in ways no one else could. And that dynamic wasn't limited to thoughts and warnings. Gollum shaped real events and altered the course of the journey. Even near the end, when Sam had lost all patience, Frodo insisted on keeping him close. "But I must see him. At once. I am not afraid." That decision shifted more than just group dynamics. Gollum's presence helped push the story toward its breaking point. Because Frodo didn't surrender the ring. He reached Mount Doom, stood above the fire, and he made a choice. "I have come," he said, "but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine." That moment wasn't hesitation. Frodo claimed the ring, fully and without regret. He had fallen, and the ring should have stayed in the world. But Gollum was still there, watching, starving for it, close enough to lunge. In a burst of wild joy, he bit off Frodo's finger and slipped into the fire. He didn't care about destroying it. He just wanted it back. But in that final grab, he finished what Frodo couldn't. He danced about and sang until he fell down into the pit. Without Gollum there, nothing breaks that final moment. Frodo walks away with the ring or dies with it still in his grasp. Either way, it endures. So return to that cell in Mirkwood for a moment. Keeping Gollum locked away doesn't remove the danger. It just removes the last piece that made success possible. That miserable figure didn't just know the route. He was the backup plan. Sauron wanted the ring, but at first he didn't know where to search. Gollum changed that. After being captured, he gave up just enough under pressure to shift the eye's focus. It only took 2 words to send everything tilting. Shire and Baggins. At the Council of Elrond, Gandalf doesn't leave any doubt. The enemy knows now that the One is found. He knows that it was a great ring, for it gave long life. He knows that it is not one of the 3, for they have never been lost and never been found, and he knows that it is not one of the 7 or the 9, because they have been accounted for. He knows that it is the One, and he has at last heard of hobbits and the Shire. That's the point where the game changes. The Nazgûl are sent. The hunt begins. Frodo's quiet corner of the world doesn't stay quiet for long. If Gollum had kept his mouth shut, the timeline might have stretched. Sauron was already mobilizing, already building armies, and preparing for open war. But without a solid lead, he likely would have stayed focused on Gondor. The Ringwraiths wouldn't have ridden into Hobbiton. The Shire would have stayed off the radar. Frodo might have stayed put well into the next season. At first glance, that sounds like it would have helped. The Fellowship could form in relative calm. The Council could debate without a deadline. Aragorn might have reached Bree first, instead of scrambling to catch up. But the ring doesn't wait. It wears the bearer down whether danger is near or not. Even in the early part of the journey, the pressure on Frodo starts to build. With no outside threat pushing him forward, he might have stalled completely. Every extra day increased the risk, both to him and to whatever plan still had a chance of working. Then, there's the matter of direction. If Gollum hadn't escaped, the enemy would still be guessing. But blind guesses come with their own consequences. Sauron might have shifted his full attention to Minas Tirith or Dol Amroth. Gondor could have taken the hit without any warning. The war might have kicked off before the Fellowship ever left Rivendell, and the small details mattered too. Even the smallest links mattered. Take Butterbur and the letter. Without the riders chasing Frodo, Gandalf's message might not have reached him in time. That delay could have left Frodo without help, without allies, and without Aragorn. One prisoner slipping away set all of this in motion. Pull that thread out, and the timing collapses. Frodo still might reach Mordor, but the longer he walks alone, the more likely everything falls apart. If Gollum never falls into the fire, the quest ends in silence, and the rest of the world is left to face the consequences. Aragorn's march to the Black Gate isn't a show of strength, but a decoy. His army is small, surrounded, and already aware of the cost. Yet they go anyway, because Frodo might still succeed, and there's no other move left to play. We cannot achieve victory by arms, but we can give Frodo his chance, and defend him, if we may, with all our strength. If the ring survives, that chance is erased. The eye turns, and Sauron senses the ring calling to him from the heart of his own land. His armies shift course, not just toward the gate, but toward Gondor itself, because the delay is over and the objective is clear. Aragorn's soldiers die on blackened stone, and their deaths mark the end of the last coordinated resistance. Gondor doesn't recover. The walls of Minas Tirith are cracked, and the fires from the siege still smolder. The Pelennor remains soaked with blood, and the loss still hangs heavy in the air. Denethor, already broken, saw what was coming long before that final march. The Palantir showed him fire and ruin, and offered no glimpse of the ring's destruction, so he climbed the tombs and burned. Boromir, the heir he had once trusted, fell defending the ring-bearer with everything he had. He never lived to see how close the quest came to ending, and if Frodo fails, if Gollum isn't there to finish it, then Boromir's death loses its meaning. His defense of Merry and Pippin becomes a brave gesture inside a story with no resolution, and the redemption he nearly reached disappears with the rest of the hope he died protecting. Faramir survives, and he might try to hold the city together. But Aragorn won't return, and Sauron won't pause. The pressure builds, the gates collapse, and the city falls again before it can ever rise. The White Tree remains bare, and the throne stays empty, because the line of kings never resumes. The House of Stewards ends in fire, not in legacy. Rohan is already spent. Its riders fell in numbers that can't be replaced, and Éomer holds the line because there's no one else left to lead it. He fights until the end, but the Golden Hall burns, and Éowyn's blow against the Witch King becomes a half-remembered strike in a war that doesn't stop to honor its dead. The elves sense what's coming, and they leave without celebration. The dwarves retreat into their halls, and the Shire remains untouched, at least for a while. But shadows spread, and they don't wait for invitations. Without a turning point, the quiet places go dark one by one. No king returns, and no age of peace begins. Frodo, who once set out to end that future, remains behind in the mountain. He doesn't die, because the ring won't let him. It keeps him breathing and watching, just long enough for the memories to slip and the purpose to fade. The ring doesn't need to be worn to work. It only needs to last. Gollum doesn't redeem Frodo, and he doesn't save him out of kindness. What he does is end it. If he's not there, the cycle turns again, and it keeps turning until there's no one left to break it. Gollum was never meant to be a hero, and he never became one. But without him, Frodo fails. At the edge of the fire, Frodo doesn't hesitate or struggle. He makes a clear decision. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine. That's the end of the quest. The ring is not destroyed because of Frodo's strength. It's destroyed because Gollum shows up, bites off a finger, and loses his footing in the middle of a celebration. He was dancing round in a frenzy of glee. And as he kissed it, it slipped from his fingers and fell. If he hadn't been there, the ring would have survived. Frodo would have stayed in the mountain with it, and Sauron might have found them both. The war would have ended before the Fourth Age began. Tolkien didn't frame it as triumph through willpower. He made it clear that pity, obsession, and bad timing played just as large a role. Gollum didn't make a noble choice. He acted exactly as expected, and that turned out to be enough. Middle-earth wasn't saved by a clean victory. It was saved by a creature who couldn't let go until the mountain did it for him. Thanks for watching this episode of Fool of a Tube. May your path be clear, your will unshaken, and may you never follow in Gollum's footsteps, unless you know exactly where they lead.